My name's Kyle, and when I was 16, my sister stabbed me in the shoulder. That alone sounds wild, but what came after? That's what really broke me. Let me back up. I grew up in a suburb just outside Indianapolis. My dad, Rick, worked in sales for a medical equipment company, always on the road. My mom, Lacey, handled billing for a local dentist and had a flexible part-time schedule so she could take care of my sister, Megan. I'm 23 now. Megan is 21. When she was born, you'd think the sun rose just for her. My dad would light up every time he talked about his girl like she was some kind of miracle. My mom instantly had her new best friend. I became the background character in my own house. It wasn't always terrible. I mean, we had the usual family moments, vacations, birthdays, cookouts. But things changed fast once Megan hit around 7. She started having these episodes. Not tantrums, real screaming, throwing, punching the wall type meltdowns, like full-on breakdowns. One time, she locked herself in the bathroom with scissors and threatened to stab herself unless my mom let her quit piano. Another time, she threw a stapler at my head because I took the last granola bar. I got used to walking on eggshells. Megan's feelings always came first. Always. Every time she acted out, my parents treated it like some big mystery to solve. They dragged her from specialist to specialist. ADHD, no wait, bipolar. Scratch that, it's anxiety now. Every 6 months, the diagnosis changed. So did the meds. So did the rules of the house. But one thing stayed the same. Everything had to revolve around Megan. If I tried to speak up, I was being insensitive. If she took my stuff or broke my headphones, I was told to be the bigger person. If she scratched my arm or slapped me, it was my job to help her through her struggles. Eventually, I stopped fighting it. I became her emotional shock absorber. At 14, I was basically her unpaid caretaker. If she was upset, I had to fix it. If she lashed out, I had to deal. My parents literally told me sometimes she just needs a safe target, Kyle. Someone who won't fight back. So that was me. The police started coming around when I was 15. One time, Megan tried to dye her hair pink and my mom said no. Megan locked herself in the bathroom and started screaming she was going to hurt herself. I had to break down the door with my foot while my dad called 911. When the cop came, he looked around me with splinters in my sock. Megan sobbing on the floor and said, "Is anyone hurt?" Before I could answer, my mom said Kyle's fine. He's great with her. This is just a mental health episode. That was the script, always. Megan lashes out, mental health. Megan steals from me, she's just trying to connect. Megan punches me in the gut, I probably provoked her. I started hiding everything important, cash, schoolwork, anything valuable. I taped $20 bills under my desk, stored stuff in my school gym locker. I even stopped bringing friends home because every time I tried, she'd do something to scare them off. Screaming fits, accusations, crying spells. By the time I was 16, I was exhausted. I worked part-time after school at a grocery store just to stay away from home. I was saving up for a gaming laptop, one of the few things that made me feel normal. Then the night everything changed, March 3rd. I'll never forget it. It was a Thursday around 9:30 p.m. I was at the kitchen table trying to cram for a chemistry test. Megan came storming downstairs furious. She'd just been suspended for threatening a classmate and wasn't allowed to go to some party that weekend. She slammed open drawers, threw stuff around. "Where's my $60?" she shouted. I looked up confused. "What money?" "Don't play dumb," she screamed. "You're the only one who goes in my room?" I hadn't been near her room in months. I told her that, calmly. "Wrong move." She started throwing things, paper, silverware, anything she could grab. Then she picked up a ceramic mug and smashed it against the wall. I tried to keep studying. I figured she'd burn herself out. Then she pulled open the knife drawer and grabbed a carving knife. "You want to lie to my face?" I froze. She lunged across the table. I tried to move, but it was too late. The blade went into my left shoulder just above the collarbone. Pain shot through my entire chest. I collapsed sideways, gasping. She dropped the knife, started crying. That wasn't guilt, it was fear. Fear of what she'd done, of what might happen next. My parents ran in. My mom screamed. My dad looked at me, then at Megan, then back at me. "What did you do to set her off?" my mom shouted. I was bleeding, barely able to stand, and that's what she said. My dad grabbed a dish towel and pressed it to the wound. He didn't even check how deep it was. He just told me, stop being dramatic. I could see white, bone or tissue or something, but they didn't call an ambulance. They didn't take me to the ER. They called Megan's therapist instead. They were more worried about her emotional stability than my physical injury. That's when I knew. I wasn't their son. I was just collateral. I waited until midnight. Everyone was asleep. My shoulder was still bleeding, but I didn't care anymore. I packed what I could, 2 shirts, a hoodie, a phone charger, took the 40 gig I'd hidden in my old chemistry book, and I left. Walked into the night without my phone, without a note, without a goodbye. I didn't have a plan. I just knew I couldn't stay another minute in that house. My shoulder was burning. My whole body was shaking, but none of that scared me as much as the thought of waking up there the next morning and pretending like everything was okay again. I walked for what felt like forever. The pain pulsed with every step, but adrenaline kept me moving. I ended up at a 24-hour gas station a couple miles from home. I stayed in the bathroom, locked the door behind me, and just sat on the closed toilet for a while, trying not to cry. I used the paper towels to press against my shoulder. It was still bleeding, but slower now. The blood had soaked through the towel I left with, so I kept swapping in fresh ones until the bleeding stopped enough that I could think straight. I stayed there all night. The guy working behind the counter didn't bother me. He saw me go in and probably figured I needed a place to crash. As long as I wasn't causing trouble, he let it slide. I don't remember sleeping. I just remember sitting there staring at the cracked tile, listening to cars outside, trying to breathe through the pain and fear. Morning came, and I was hungry. I used $3 to buy a pack of crackers and a bottle of water. That left me with 40, not much to survive on. I didn't know anything about living on the street, but I quickly figured out that standing still makes people suspicious. I had to move around, look like I belonged somewhere. I walked all day. No destination, just moving. I went to a library when it opened and sat in the far corner with an old chemistry textbook. It didn't matter what I read. I just needed a place where nobody asked questions. The library became my daytime hideout. It had bathrooms running water-free Wi-Fi. I could clean my wound in the sink when no one was looking, and I'd wrap it up with tissue and tape when I could find some. By the end of the week, the gash had scabbed over. It still looked rough, and I was pretty sure it was infected, but I didn't have the money or nerve to go to a clinic. I scavenged food from gas station trash cans, usually late at night when no one was around. People throw away whole bags of chips, uneaten sandwiches, barely touched drinks. You stop thinking about how gross it is when you're hungry. You just eat and hope it doesn't make you sick. Sleeping was the worst part. I tried a few places behind a diner, under a bridge, in the back of a laundromat, but it was risky. People notice when someone's hanging around too long without buying anything. Some nights I stayed awake the whole time just to avoid getting kicked, robbed, or worse. I was on day 6 when I met Tommy. He was in his late 50s, worked the night shift at a scrapyard on the far edge of town. I'd been hovering near the fence, thinking about sneaking in to sleep near the rusted cars when he called out, "You lost kid." I didn't lie. Told him I needed somewhere quiet. Somewhere safe. He looked at me for a long second, then nodded toward a dented trailer parked near the back. "You don't break nothing, you can sleep there. Just stay out of sight." That trailer became my first real shelter. No electricity, no running water. The floor creaked and the roof leaked when it rained, but I had a place to stretch out and breathe. Tommy never asked too many questions. He didn't have to. Guys like him, they've seen enough to know when someone's been through hell. He showed me the ropes, where to get free food, which shelters to avoid, which places hired day labor without ID. I started helping him during his breaks, sorting metal moving junk, keeping things organized. He paid me in small ways, leftover food, extra blankets, old clothes. Eventually, he gave me a prepaid phone so I could have a number to write down when applying for jobs. I never told him everything, just enough to let him know I wasn't running from the law or high on anything. He respected that. Most nights I sat in the trailer listening to the wind outside and trying to imagine what it would be like to have a normal life again. School felt like a dream someone else had. Family was a word that meant pain. Around my 17th birthday, I started getting regular work through this guy named Joe who ran a day labor pickup behind the hardware store. Every morning, about 30 of us would gather waiting for contractors to swing by in their trucks looking for bodies. If you looked clean and didn't act high, you had a better shot. I shaved with library bathroom razors, wore the same hoodie every day, and kept my mouth shut. I was young, strong, and willing to do anything: dig ditches, lift heavy furniture, clean up after floods. I got picked often. I made $50 here, 70 there, cash in hand, no questions, no paperwork. I saved every dollar, ate cheap, lived simple. The trailer gave me space, but no heat. Winters were brutal. I wore 3 layers of socks, 2 pairs of jeans, and a hoodie stuffed under my coat. I'd sleep wrapped in 2 blankets and a sleeping bag Tommy found for me at the dump. If it got really bad, I spent the night in the community center bathroom. They left it open for emergencies, and I wasn't the only one who knew about it. About a month later, I met Mike. He was a contractor, mid-40s, serious face, quiet voice. Ran a small remodeling business. Kitchens, bathrooms. Nothing fancy, but steady work. He hired me once to help tear out drywall, and I guess I impressed him because he started asking for me specifically. Unlike most guys who just wanted grunt labor, Mike actually taught me things. He showed me how to use tools properly, how to read blueprints, how to fix small electrical issues. He treated me like I had potential, not like a disposable body. One day, we were installing cabinets and he looked over and said, "You ever think about getting your GED?" I shrugged. School felt like another lifetime. He didn't push, just said, "You're smart, don't waste it." The thought stuck with me. A few weeks later, I went to the community college. I didn't have an ID or any documents, but the woman at the desk helped me figure it out. Said if I passed the practice tests, I could enroll in their GED prep for free. I spent the next 2 months working during the day and studying at night in the library. I passed the test on my first try. It felt unreal, like I'd pulled something impossible out of thin air. Mike took me out to dinner to celebrate. Nothing fancy, just a diner with real silverware and a waitress who called me honey, but it was the first real celebration of my life. He told me his brother Tony was looking for plumbing apprentices. It was a real job, long-term, certification, benefits. At 18, I started my apprenticeship. The work was hard, crawling under houses, fixing busted pipes in winter, dealing with raw sewage sometimes, but it was honest and I loved it. Every day, I learned something new. Every week, I got a little better. I still lived in the trailer at first, but by the time I was 19, I'd saved enough to rent a tiny studio apartment. Just 1 room and a bathroom. But it had heat, a lock on the door, and a shower I didn't have to share. It was mine. I bought furniture from thrift shops, a table, a real bed, even a TV. I started to feel like a person again. By 20, I was making decent money and taking night classes to finish my certification faster. Tony treated me like family, always checking in, making sure I had what I needed. I never told him the full story either, but I think he understood more than he let on. For the first time in years, I felt safe. I felt strong. I was building something real, and I never once looked back. But life has a funny way of digging up things you thought were buried for good. They weren't done with me yet, not even close. By the time I turned 21, life was stable, in a way I never thought possible. I had my own place, a real career, people who respected me because of what I could do, not what I could tolerate. My workday started early, ended late, and left me bone-tired. But it was the kind of tired that came from earning your place, not surviving someone else's chaos. I didn't think much about my past anymore. It felt like something I'd shut the door on years ago. Until one lazy Saturday afternoon, I got curious. I was cleaning out an old drawer and found a stack of papers, old mail, and a sticky note with login info to my high school Facebook account. I hadn't touched it since I left. On a whim, I logged in. Big mistake. The moment the page loaded, I saw post after post from my mom. Photos from years ago. Grainy shots of birthday parties and Christmas mornings with captions like, "Still waiting for our boy to come home. A mother's love never gives up." I stared at them stunned. She'd been posting for years, pretending like I had just wandered off. There were comments from old neighbors and family friends, people asking if I'd been found offering prayers, sharing heartfelt emojis. Not one of them had any idea what really happened. According to the online version of my parents, I was a troubled teen who ran away from home and broke their hearts. No mention of the stabbing. No mention of blood on the kitchen floor. No hint that their daughter had put a knife in me and they told me it was my fault. It made me sick. But more than that, it made me angry. They weren't grieving, they were performing, playing victims while the truth stayed buried under Facebook likes and sympathy. I should have just closed the tab and let it be. But something snapped. I sent a message. Just one line, I'm alive. Leave me alone. No name, no context. Just enough to make sure they knew I wasn't buried in a ditch somewhere. That was all I intended. I thought it would bring closure. It didn't. It opened a door I'd sealed shut for years. A week later, my phone rang. Unknown number. I ignored it. Then it rang again and again. Voicemails started piling up. The fourth one was from my cousin Amber. She somehow got my number and left a message like nothing had happened. Hey Kyle, it's been so long. Your parents are really trying to reach you. They miss you. We all do. You should call them. I blocked her, but the calls didn't stop. New numbers, emails to my work account, comments on the company website. My dad even called Tony once, pretending to be a potential client just to get close. He left a message saying it's urgent family business. Please ask Kyle to contact his parents. I was furious. They hadn't changed. They were just better at pretending. They weren't reaching out because they wanted to make things right. They wanted to control the story again. And when I didn't play along, they tried harder. Next came the guilt emails, long walls of text from my mother talking about how hard it had been on them. How Megan had struggled after I left. How I'd left them to clean up the mess I made. She said my disappearance ruined their reputation. That people had started asking uncomfortable questions. That it hurt her deeply when someone at church whispered, "Where's your son now?" I stared at those emails and didn't feel a single thing. No sadness, no guilt, just a cold, tired certainty that I'd made the right choice walking away. When I ignored the messages, they escalated. They started sending letters to my apartment. I don't know how they got the address, maybe through a public records search or one of those people finder websites. I opened one. Just one. Inside was a birthday card and a photo. It was me and Megan, maybe age 6 and 4, sitting on the porch with popsicles. The message said, "You were such a good, big brother. We still remember." I shredded it. The past they wanted to remember wasn't real. The real past involved me scrubbing blood from the floor while my mom yelled at me for making my sister cry. They remembered a fantasy. I remembered the truth. Then one day they showed up. At my house. I'd just gotten back from a plumbing emergency across town. Muddy boots, toolbox still in hand when the doorbell rang. I looked out the peephole and felt my stomach drop. It was them, my parents. My mom holding a plastic container of cookies like this was some sort of social visit. My dad standing stiffly, hands in his pockets, eyes scanning the neighborhood. I didn't want to open the door, but part of me needed to see them with my own eyes. To confirm they were still the same people I left bleeding out of my life. I opened the door just enough to block the frame with my body. "What are you doing here?" I asked. My mom smiled like we were picking up where we left off. "Kyle, sweetie, can we come in? We just want to talk." I stood there for a moment, then stepped aside. They walked in like they still owned the space. My mom looked around, complimented. The couch said it looked so grown up. My dad said nothing. Just stood near the wall like he was bracing for an argument. I didn't offer them drinks, didn't ask them to sit, just folded my arms and waited. My mom launched in first. Said they'd been praying for this day, said they were glad I was safe. Then she got to the real reason they came. We need to move past what happened, as a family. I laughed. I couldn't help it. It just came out. Move past what happened. You mean the part where your daughter stabbed me and you told me it was my fault? She blinked like she hadn't expected me to say it out loud. My dad stepped in, then voice cold and clipped. You embarrassed us, Kyle. You left in the middle of the night. You didn't tell anyone where you were. People asked questions. You made it look like we drove you out. I stared at him. You didn't? Megan did. You just stood there and watched. He looked away. My mom sighed, her tone soft, like she was trying to play peacemaker. Megan's changed Kyle. She's in therapy. She has a job, a boyfriend. She wants to apologize. She asked us to arrange this. I didn't respond. Not right away. I just looked around at my own house, my furniture, my walls, my tools, everything I'd built from nothing. And here they were walking into it like it was an extension of their world. I finally said, then she can apologize. One time. Here. Next week. That's it. You show up again after that, I press charges. My dad clenched his jaw, but he nodded. My mom smiled like she'd just won something. They left after 15 more minutes of awkward small talk. After the door closed, I stood in the silence and felt the weight of the moment. I wasn't scared of them anymore. That was new. The following Saturday, they came back. This time, Megan was with them. She looked different. Older, tired, but clearer. She didn't storm in. She didn't raise her voice. She sat on the edge of my couch and stared at the floor for a long time before speaking. And when she finally did, her voice cracked. You did good for yourself. Better than anyone expected. And I'm sorry, Kyle. I remember everything I did. The screaming, the lying, the way I hit you. I used you as my punching bag because I knew you wouldn't hit back. She took a breath. I'm not here to fix things. I just needed to say that. To your face. I didn't say anything. Just nodded once. She stood up, wiped her eyes, and turned to leave. My parents started in again, trying to smooth things over, trying to play the victims. But I cut them off. No, Megan took responsibility. That's more than either of you ever did. You still don't even understand what you did. You just want the story to go away. My mom looked stunned. My dad muttered something about disrespect, but I was done. I opened the door and pointed. They left without another word. Megan looked back once. I gave her a small nod. That was all she needed, all I was willing to give. When the door closed, I leaned against it and breathed. Deep, slow. And for the first time in years, it didn't hurt to remember. It was still there, yes, but it didn't control me anymore. They couldn't rewrite the past. I'd already built a better future, and I wasn't giving that up for anyone. After they left that day, I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just cleaned the living room like I was wiping their presence off every surface. My parents had walked into my home thinking they could just smooth things over with a few careful words and a plate of cookies. Megan at least had the decency to show up with something real. Not perfect, not healing, but real. That small nod I gave her wasn't forgiveness. It was recognition. She'd carried the truth into the room and left it there without asking me to hold it for her. That was more than either of our parents ever did. After the door shut behind them, I went back to work like I always had. No big speech, no dramatic reset, just grit, timing, and focus. Over the next few months, business picked up. Word of mouth spread faster than I expected. When someone's pipes burst in the middle of the night or their water heater dies on a Sunday morning, they don't want excuses. They want someone who shows up and does the job right the first time. That became my reputation. Quiet, efficient, no mess left behind, and always fair. I wasn't trying to build an empire. I just didn't want to feel disposable again. Tony, the guy who gave me my shot in plumbing, eventually offered me a small partnership in the company. I didn't even believe it at first. He handed me a folder one morning after we finished a nasty sewer line repair and said, "You've earned more than a paycheck." Inside were the papers that made me part owner. It didn't hit me right away. I remember staring at the forms, rereading my name, and feeling something I hadn't let myself feel in years: pride. Not just for surviving, but for becoming someone I actually respected. With the new role came new responsibilities. I started training apprentices, scheduling teams, managing supplier relationships. I was no longer just the guy under the house fixing pipes. I was building the next wave of workers. And I took that seriously. Every kid who walked through that shop got treated with the respect I never had. I didn't ask about their past unless they offered. I didn't assume their story. I gave them the kind of steady ground I would have killed for when I was 16. Eventually, I bought a house. It wasn't huge, but it was solid. 2 bedrooms, decent yard, nothing fancy. But every tile, every coat of paint, every inch of it felt like a middle finger to the past. I filled it slowly, used furniture, garage sale finds, hand-me-downs from clients. I didn't rush it. I didn't need perfection. I just needed peace. Some weekends I'd sit on the back porch with a cold drink and let the quiet settle in. It's strange how silence can heal when it's finally yours. I didn't date much during those years. I tried a couple of times, but trust doesn't grow well in soil that's been scorched. Most people didn't understand why I kept my family at arm's length. And I didn't feel like explaining that when you've been blamed for your own bleeding, small talk loses its charm. So I focused on work, on building, on the kind of stability that doesn't fall apart when someone else decides they're having a bad day. Then one afternoon, something unexpected happened. I got a call from Megan. She didn't text first. She didn't email, just called. I let it go to voicemail. I listened to the message twice. Her voice was careful, but steady. "Hey, I know this is weird and you don't owe me anything, but I wanted to ask if we could talk. Just us. No parents, no pressure. I'll be in town next weekend. If you don't want to see me, I get it." I didn't know what to do with that. Part of me wanted to delete the message and pretend I never heard it. Another part, the one that remembered her face the day she apologized, felt like maybe it was time to hear what she really had to say. So I called her back. We agreed to meet at a diner not far from my place. Neutral ground. Public enough that nothing weird could happen, but quiet enough that we could actually talk. When I walked in, she was already there. She looked older, and not just in the way people age. She carried herself differently, less volatile, more grounded. We sat, ordered coffee, and just stared at each other for a minute. Then she spoke. "I didn't come to rehash everything. I just wanted to tell you what happened after you left. The part you never saw." I nodded. Let her talk. She told me about the years after I disappeared, how my parents panicked at first, then doubled down on the same story they always told: mental health issues, troubled sibling too sensitive to handle the pressure. They told neighbors I'd been struggling for a long time. Framed it like I'd cracked under the weight of my own expectations. Megan said she believed it at first. Needed to believe it. "It was easier to think you were unstable than to admit I stabbed you," she said, eyes flickering down to her coffee cup. She talked about therapy. Real therapy this time. The kind where no one sugarcoated her behavior. She said her boyfriend, now fiancé, helped her face it. That he once told her, "You can't build a future on denial. It always caves in." She told me about the breakdowns, the journals, the long nights where she replayed that night in the kitchen over and over in her head. And then she stopped talking. Looked me dead in the eye. "I don't expect you to forgive me, but I need you to know what I did to you changed everything. I used to think I was the broken one, but we all were. And I was the one who took it out on you." I didn't have some grand response. I just sat there breathing in the words. They felt heavier than I expected. Not like a burden, but like bricks being lifted off one at a time. "I believe you," I said finally. "I'm glad you're doing better." That was it. No dramatic hug, no tearful reunion. Just 2 people sitting across from each other, acknowledging the wreckage and the rebuilding. She left first. I sat there for a while after listening to the quiet hum of the diner, the clink of dishes, the low chatter of other tables. It hit me then how far I'd come. There was no going back. No version of life where we played happy family and laughed over holidays. But there was something better now. Distance without rage. Peace without pretending. Megan had found her way out of the storm, too. We weren't friends, we weren't close, but we were no longer enemies in silence, and that was enough. That night, I walked into my house, flicked on the lights, and looked around. Everything was in its place. Clean, steady, safe. I cooked dinner, watched a bit of TV, then stepped out onto the porch like I always did. The stars were out. The air was still. I thought about the boy who left home bleeding and scared. Thought about the man who came back stronger than anyone expected. And I realized I hadn't just escaped. I'd rebuilt something real. And I wasn't done yet. The days after meeting Megan were quieter, but not in the peaceful way I'd grown used to. It was the kind of quiet that comes with waiting like the air before a storm you can't quite see. Something in the back of my mind kept circling the idea that the past wasn't finished with me yet. And I was right. 2 weeks later, I got another knock at the door. This time it wasn't Megan. It was my mom. Alone. No cookies, no forced smile. Just her standing on the front step like a woman who didn't know how to ask for something she'd already been told she couldn't have. I didn't say anything. Just looked at her. She glanced down, then back at me. Please, just 5 minutes. I stepped aside mostly because I didn't want to have that conversation on the porch with neighbors peeking through curtains. She walked in slowly, looking around like it might all disappear if she blinked too hard. I didn't offer her a seat. She didn't ask. I know I can't undo what we did, she said, voice low. But I need you to understand we were scared. Megan was impossible. Your dad and I didn't know what to do. We were trying to keep the family together. I stood in the middle of the room, arms crossed, just listening. She kept going. We didn't mean to hurt you. You have to know that. We were just overwhelmed. We thought if we could manage her, everything else would work itself out. We didn't see what it was doing to you. I almost laughed, not out of humor, but out of disbelief. Because they did see. They just didn't care. Or maybe caring would have required them to take action. And they never had the courage to act. You're not here to explain, I said finally. You're here to clear your conscience. But I'm not holding that for you. She nodded slowly, as if she'd expected that. Your father wants to see you, she said after a pause. He's not good with words, but he's proud of you. I raised an eyebrow. Proud of what? That I survived you both? Her face cracked a little. You weren't supposed to leave forever. But you were fine when I did, I said. You didn't call the police? You didn't file a missing persons report. You let me vanish and made it look like I had some teenage crisis. Meanwhile, I was bleeding, sleeping behind gas stations, wondering if I'd die before anyone even noticed I was gone. Her hands shook a little, but I didn't feel bad. She deserved to hear it. You abandoned me, I added. The day Megan stabbed me, and you asked what I did to provoke her, that was the moment I stopped being your son. You don't get to rewrite that now. She swallowed hard. I know we failed you. I looked her in the eyes. You didn't just fail. You erased me. You turned me into a scapegoat and expected me to thank you for it. She looked down again. I let the silence hang between us. Then she said, almost too softly to hear I'm sorry. For the first time, I believed she meant it. Not because it came with tears or drama, but because it didn't come with excuses. Just the plain, hard truth. I nodded, not as forgiveness, but as acknowledgement. Then I opened the door. She took the hint. As she stepped out, she paused. If you ever want to talk again, I'll be here. I didn't respond. Just closed the door behind her. After that, I didn't hear from them for a while. No calls, no emails. It was like the air had cleared for the first time in years. I went back to work, back to living. But something in me had shifted. For a long time, I thought healing meant pretending the past didn't matter. That building a better life would erase the scars. But sitting across from my mother that day, I realized the scars weren't the problem. It was the silence. The years I spent biting my tongue, swallowing pain, telling myself it was normal. That's what weighed me down. That's what made sleep hard and trust harder. So I started writing, not for anyone else, just for me. Every memory I buried, every time I told myself it wasn't that bad, I wrote it down. I wanted to see it, name it, let it exist without shame. And through that, I started to feel lighter. That writing turned into something else, a blog. Anonymous at first, just stories about growing up with a mentally ill sibling, surviving toxic family dynamics, rebuilding from the ground up. I didn't expect anyone to read it, but they did. Comments started showing up. Messages from strangers saying, "This sounds like my life," or "I thought I was the only one." People started sharing it. Before long, the blog had a small following. Survivors, fighters, builders, people who didn't run away, they ran toward a better life. And for the first time, I didn't feel like an outlier. I felt seen. One of those readers reached out privately. Her name was Danny. She said my story gave her the courage to leave a relationship that was eating her alive. We started messaging back and forth. No expectations, no pressure, just two people who understood that healing isn't clean or fast or pretty. It's work. She lived a few towns over, ran her own photography business. We met up for coffee after a couple months of chatting. Then again, then again. There was no spark at first sight, no fairy tale moment, just something steady, honest, safe. And that was more valuable to me than fireworks. Danny was different. She never asked me to explain why I didn't talk to my parents, never pressured me to reconnect. She didn't try to fix me. She just stood beside me. Quiet, steady. And over time, I found myself letting my guard down in ways I never had before. One night, I told her everything. From the knife to the trailer to the diner with Megan. She didn't cry. She didn't try to offer solutions. She just held my hand and said, "You made it out. And you didn't become them." That meant everything. We didn't rush into anything. Took it slow. But steady grew into serious. I fixed her sink one afternoon and she laughed and said I should marry you just for that. It was a joke. But I kept thinking about it. And one day I asked her, not with a big ring or public gesture, just sitting on her couch watching a storm roll in. "I want a life with you," I said. "Not perfect, not flashy, just real. Are you in?" She said yes. We didn't invite my parents to the wedding. Megan came. Quiet, respectful, dressed simply. She brought a card, nothing more. Inside it just said, "You deserve this." That was enough. Standing there, holding Danny's hands, saying vows I actually believed in. I felt something I never thought I'd feel again, peace. Not because everything was perfect, but because I knew who I was. I wasn't just the kid who got hurt. I wasn't just the runaway. I was a builder. A man who started with nothing and built a life brick by brick, and no one could take that from me. The wedding was small, just close friends and a few neighbors who'd become like family over the years. It didn't need to be big. What mattered was that it felt real. The vows weren't about pretending to be perfect, they were about showing up every day, choosing each other with honesty and care. Danny and I didn't promise a fairy tale. We promised peace. After the ceremony, we had a simple dinner in the backyard under string lights we'd hung ourselves the week before. It was quiet, full of laughter and warmth, nothing dramatic. Just people sharing food, trading stories, and watching us step into something new together. And for the first time in my life, I felt completely safe. Not because I was hiding, not because I was pretending, but because I was exactly where I was supposed to be. No masks, no lies, just me. A few months after the wedding, I got a letter in the mail. No return address. Just my name written carefully on the envelope. I opened it and immediately recognized the handwriting. It was from my dad, 4 pages long. He didn't ask for anything, didn't demand a meeting, just wrote everything he probably should have said years ago. He admitted they failed me, that they saw me bleeding and looked away. that they tried to protect an image of family instead of the actual people in it. He said he didn't expect me to forgive him, that maybe he didn't deserve it, but he hoped I'd keep living well. That was all he asked. And strangely, that's what made it mean more. It wasn't a performance. It wasn't about their guilt anymore. It was about owning the truth, even if it was too late to fix the damage. I folded the letter and put it in a box with a few old things I'd kept: my GED certificate, a photo of me and Tony after my first big plumbing job, the business license with my name on it. Not trophies, just markers, proof of how far I'd come. I didn't write back. Maybe one day I will. But it felt like a chapter finally closing without slamming shut. Danny and I settled into a rhythm. She took photos for weddings, families, local events. I ran the plumbing side of our growing business. We didn't make millions, but we made enough. Enough to pay the bills, save a little, and take a long weekend every few months somewhere quiet. We planted a small garden out back, nothing fancy, just tomatoes, herbs, a few flowers. Watching things grow out of dirt never stopped feeling meaningful to me. Maybe because I knew what it was like to come from nothing. Some nights we'd sit outside after dinner watching the sky fade from orange to blue. I'd tell her about old memories when they came up, not to dwell, but because sharing them made the weight a little lighter. And she'd listen always without trying to fix it, just held the space. And I realized that's what healing actually is. Not pretending it didn't happen, not pretending it didn't hurt, but living in a way that proves it doesn't control you anymore. A year after the wedding, Danny told me she was pregnant. I didn't react the way I thought I would. I didn't panic. I didn't worry about becoming like my parents. I just felt quiet joy, like I'd been handed something sacred, something worth protecting. We found out it was a boy. And while we shopped for tiny clothes and picked out names, I kept thinking about the boy I used to be. The one who wrapped a dish towel around his bleeding shoulder and walked out into the night with nothing. I wished I could sit next to that kid now. Not to rescue him, not to change the past. Just to tell him, you make it. You become something. Someone. You love and you are loved. You are not your trauma. You are not your pain. You're more than what they did to you. Our son was born in late spring. We named him Lucas. Holding him in the hospital, I promised him two things. One, he'd never have to earn love by being quiet. And two, I would never make him feel like he had to carry someone else's pain to be accepted. I didn't know what kind of dad I'd be. I didn't have a map, but I had a compass. And it pointed straight at honesty, stability, and kindness. I figured that was a good start. Sometimes I still get messages from extended family, cousins, aunts, old neighbors. Some of them ask questions. Others just send generic thinking of you emails. I don't reply, not out of hate, just boundaries. My life is full now, and I get to choose what stays and what doesn't. The door to my past isn't locked, but it doesn't swing open for anyone who once stood by while I bled. As Lucas grew, I started telling him stories, not the hard ones, not yet, but simple ones, about tools and how they work, about how water flows through pipes, about how things break and can be fixed if you pay attention. One night he asked why I liked fixing things so much. I smiled and said, because I know what it's like to feel broken, and I know how powerful it feels to put something back together. We framed that moment. Literally. Danny took a photo of me and Lucas sitting on the garage floor surrounded by wrenches and pipe fittings with that quote written under it. We hung it in the hallway. Every time I pass it, I remember who I am. Not a victim, not a runaway, not someone who disappeared, but a man who showed up even when no one else did, who built a life one repair at a time, and who made peace with the past not by forgetting it, but by refusing to let it define his future. That's my story. And if you're listening to this thinking you can't escape what you came from, let me tell you something from one survivor to another. You can. It's not easy. It's not fast. But it's possible. You don't need permission to start. You don't need approval to walk away. You just need to believe that peace isn't a reward you earn. It's something you build, one choice at a time, just like I did. Story 2. "You're pregnant," the doctor declared. When his mother laughed and remarked, "It's impossible," my husband's expression brightened. Last year, my son underwent a vasectomy. My spouse became pale and my pulse raced. He muttered, "Tell me she's lying." "Then explain this," I asked, taking out a piece of paper. His mother fell apart when his jaw fell. I never thought my life would turn out that way. I'm a 32-year-old Chicagoan, married to a 34-year-old Mark. We have two amazing children, Emma, age 8, and Noah, age 6, and have been together for 10 years. We both felt that our family was complete once Noah was born. I agreed with Mark's decision to have a vasectomy. I trusted him when he told me it was over. I have been feeling strange, queasy, exhausted, and a lot of emotion lately. I initially assumed it was simply stress. Or perhaps there is a bug around. However, I became concerned when I didn't get my period. In order to rule it out, I chose to get a pregnancy test. As the seconds passed, my heart raced as I waited in the restroom. Two strong lines glared back at me when I eventually looked, expecting a child. I experienced a mixture of terror, bewilderment, and shock. How is this possible? That night, after putting Emma and Noah to bed, Mark underwent a vasectomy. In the living room, I sat Mark down. I gave him the pregnancy test that came back positive. I whispered, "I'm pregnant." Mark's face became white. "That isn't feasible," he said. "Well, it's happening," I said, attempting to seem calm. He looked at me, then at the test. "Are you certain it belongs to me?" It seemed as if someone had hit me. "What right do you have to ask that?" He raised his voice and shouted, "I had a vasectomy." "I also had faith in you," I fired back. However, here we are. We sat tensely, quiet. Mark finally said anything. "Perhaps we ought to go to the doctor jointly. Perhaps there's a reason." I concurred. We made an appointment at the doctor's office for the following day. Another pregnancy test was performed on me. The physician attested to it. Yes, I was pregnant. Mark started looking for a doctor. 2 years ago, I underwent a vasectomy. How can this be? After glancing at Mark, the doctor turned to face me. He clarified that there is no 100% effective way. When the great disparity reconnects, there is a slim possibility of recanonization. Although it's uncommon, it can occur. Mark seems to calm down a little. Thus, it is feasible. Indeed, the physician gave a nod. To be certain, we'll need to do some experiments. Silently, we walked out of the office. Mark turned to me when he got home. "I apologize for having doubted you," he replied. I gave a nod. "I'm crying. I need time to think about this." We seldom spoke to one another over the following few days. There was a lot of stress. I felt insulted, deceived, and perplexed. To get my thoughts straight, I made the decision to spend some time with my sister. I confided in my sister while I was at her house. She patiently listened. She advised you to make the best decision for both you and the children. I gave a nod. Simply put, I'm not sure whether I can still trust him. Go slowly. She gave advice. Weeks passed. Mark apologized and asked me to come home several times when he called. I wasn't prepared. My sister's door was knocked on one evening. It was Mark. "Can we have a conversation?" he inquired. After hesitating, I nodded. On the porch, we sat. "I made a mistake," he started. "I ought to have spoken the truth about the vasectomy. I felt afraid. I didn't want to lose you, but I also didn't want any more children." I searched his face as I gazed at him. "Mark Trust has been betrayed." He gave a nod. "I understand, but I want to rebuild it for the baby Emma and Noah as well as for us." My cheeks started to well up with tears. "I require time." "Take as much time as you require," he answered quietly. We went to counseling sessions throughout the course of the weeks. We were dedicated to mending, even if it was a hard path. As I held our newborn daughter months later, I came to the realization that with work and love, trust can be restored, even if it takes years to develop and minutes to break. So we tried therapy, talking more, being present for the children, moving slowly. Mark and I weren't really together, but we were getting along. I had returned home. Emma and Noah appeared content once more, and the only tiny light that let me bear the weight in my chest was our daughter Sophie. Then the true storm struck 3 months after Sophie's birth. There was a bell to start. One afternoon, I was sorting through the mail. I'm half asleep after spending the entire night with the infant. One envelope was particularly noticeable: a private clinic's medical billing. I couldn't remember the name. It bore Mark's name. Without thinking, I opened it. A consultation costs $340. Sophie's birth was 2 weeks away. Reversal consultation for vasectomy. Bolded. At the top are letters. My hands became icy. I felt sick to my stomach. I sat there looking at the page for what felt like 15 minutes. I read the words again and again. I grabbed my phone and dialed the number. I pretended to be Mark's helper. Inquired about the services covered by the consultation. Yes, the receptionist replied. He inquired about the possibility of undoing a prior vasectomy. Here, we don't do it. He claimed that our referral to a specialist was just for informational purposes. He made no further reservations, to the best of my knowledge. I hung up after thanking her. He lied twice because I was having trouble breathing. He never had the vasectomy to start. 2 weeks before, to the due date, he had been investigating a reversal. So even though he seemed startled when I became pregnant, he already knew it was feasible. I was ill. I approached him that evening and showed him the bell. I did not cry, nor did I yell. Just tell me what's this. He gazed at it for a moment, then at me. He remarked. I just wanted to know if it could be done. I was considering changing my mind later. You informed me that you had previously had a vasectomy and you were considering reversing it. Slowly, I asked. He appeared to be an animal in captivity. You gave me the impression that Sophie was a medical marvel. You gave me the impression that I was going crazy. You pretended to be caught off guard. However, you were aware. You were aware since you never got the fucking vasectomy in the first place. I wasn't sure if it would work. He didn't say anything. Anger began to rise in a level I had never experienced before. Not even after the test came back positive. Not even when he said I was unfaithful. This was not like the others. This was an act of treachery that lasted for years. I started to doubt my physique because of you. Mark, you caused me to doubt my morals. He parted his lips to say something. I got to my feet. No, don't speak. For tonight, I'm done. I went to my buddy Mia's apartment after packing my luggage. When she saw my face, she didn't inquire and had a spare room. I phoned a lawyer the next day. At that point, I learned something that completely turned everything upside down once more. A few months prior, Mark had obtained a personal loan. 2,000 chant. None of that money had been visible to me. Our joint account did not include it. I was completely unaware of the loan. While looking through our financial documents, my lawyer discovered it. Mark paused before responding that money was for house repairs when I inquired. What repairs? I inquired. He was unable to respond. On the south side, a week later, Mia and I passed a modest apartment building. Outside, a woman was pushing a baby stroller. Mark emerged from the structure. He gave the woman a cheek kiss, picked up the infant. I went cold. Time paused. Mia muttered, "Would you like me to leave in my car?" "No," I said, getting out and crossing the street. I was 5 feet away before he saw me. The color faded from his face. "Who is this?" I inquired. The woman seems perplexed. I am. Tasha. Are you? His wife is me. She blinked. I apologize. What? I looked across at Mark. Should I explain, or do you want to? Tasha took a step back and gripped the infant more tightly. Hold on, wife. You mentioned being divorced. He didn't answer. Right in front of the building, I burst out laughing. It was a second life for Mark, a second child. The vasectomy was reversed by him. All he had done was lie. I was buried beneath the falsehoods which were laid out like bricks. Tasha glanced at me, then at him. The infant's age is 6 months. Before he knew I was pregnant, Mark got Sophie pregnant when she was just 3 months old. It was as though he wished for the earth to split apart and engulf him. Tasha broke down in tears. I was numb as I stood there. Mia approached me from behind. "Are you prepared?" Quietly, she asked. I gave a nod. I didn't speak to Mark again. Then, no, we left. Tasha sent me a Facebook message 3 hours later. "I didn't know he was married," she said. Stated that she wished to meet and speak. I concurred. We met in a diner the next day. She supplied documentation, pictures, texts, and receipts. For more than a year, they have been together. He informed her that we were on the verge of divorcing each other, said that I was unstable, claimed that custody issues prevented him from seeing his children. He also claimed that Tasha's kid was born first by using Sophie's due date. Everything was perverted by him. She repeatedly apologized. I trusted her. She was also taken by surprise. "This isn't your fault," I told her. "He tricked us both." I began to write everything down that evening. Every lie, every date, each and every dime, every late night, every excuse, every missed call. I had decided to stop crying. I was going to record everything. This went beyond simple treachery. It was war. I believed I had witnessed the worst. I considered learning about the double life, the hidden flat, and the second baby. That seemed like the bottom to me. I was mistaken. Tasha messaged me once again 2 weeks following our meeting. "Is it possible for us to meet? It's critical. There is another matter at hand. Something significant." It was the same diner where we met. She slipped her phone across the table with trembling hands. "It's money," she stated. I glanced down. Screenshots, bank statements, and transfers from my husband's account to hers were all present. Thousands. At least $6,000. "But," she added hastily, "I didn't ask for this." He said it was for the baby's benefit. It was additional money from his company. "You guys were no longer tied financially," he continued. I went through each one, then I stopped. One such transaction drew my attention. Sandy G. A woman received 200 an explanation. Sessions of therapy. However, I was already familiar with that name. A year ago, I noticed Sandy G's name on a flyer. She did not work as a therapist. She was a fertility specialist who worked covertly, frequently outside the system with men who were attempting to reverse vasectomies. Basically, a covert method of getting past the law. For the reversal, he had never seen a legitimate physician. He made an illicit, clandestine, and off-the-books payment to someone. Because of this, nothing appeared in our official documents or insurance. My mouth became parched. "Are you certain she is real?" I inquired. Tasha gave a nod. I gave her a call. I acted as though I were someone else. She attested that he arrived and paid in cash. "Was it completed?" I responded in a trembling voice. "He planned this. Everything. You, me too, pregnancies. Everything." She appeared in disbelief. "Hold on. Do you believe he intended for this to occur?" I said, "Not by accident. Intentionally." He desired both. Then I had a memory. Something modest. Foolish. It felt like a hint now, though. It was 6 months prior to my pregnancy. Mark had become overly kind. In bed, he brought me coffee. He went out with the children more. After being frigid for months, he was loving once more. We also ceased utilizing protection during that period. He said that because he had undergone a vasectomy, it was safe. However, I now realized it was untrue. He was aware that I want a second child. Over the years, I had mentioned it a few times, typically in passing. What if he always said no? What if that's what he used? What if he had it arranged as a trap to impose some perverse family structure, get me pregnant once more, and have another child with someone else? My mind was racing. While he was at work that evening, I looked through his laptop. I was surprised at how simple it was. The password was never altered by him. It's the same one from college. There were screenshots in one folder with the name Taxes 2021, emails, notes, everything he had written down, timetables for when I was at home and when I wasn't with the children, meal schedules, appointments, and even Tasha-related information, due dates, planning for births. At Docs, a paper with the title New Future was scheduled. When I opened it, I felt like throwing up after reading it. I'll have 2 families if this succeeds. After the kid is born, she will forgive me. She never fails to pardon me. I can deal with both, but Tasha doesn't ask questions. All you have to do is keep life apart. It was his plan. More than one error. It's not a foolish matter, not by chance. He had a parallel life that he project managed. He viewed me as a chessboard piece. Everything was printed by me. I handed everything over to my lawyer the next day. Every lie, every screenshot. We requested financial protection, a restraining order, and full custody. Then there was another twist. 2 days later, I received a call from Mark's job. "Hello, this is HR's Megan. We are attempting to contact Mark. He has been absent all week. Is everything all right?" I blinked. He has been attending work each day. That's what he tells me anyhow. "No, he hasn't come back since leaving last Friday. We've made a call." No answer. I used my phone to see where he was. Dead. I looked at his email. Removed. I visited a bank. Over $18,000 was withdrawn from our joint account. Lost. Denver was the location of the most recent transaction. Mark was gone. He took off running. He stole our money. He abandoned me. Tasha. His 3 children simply vanished. I'm here now with 2 damaged houses, a pie, and 2 attorneys. I believed the man I married didn't want any more children. As it happens, the guy I married desired a clandestine empire. It's not just us, I believe. Because according to the gentleman, they recently identified a 3rd woman in Colorado who gave birth last year. I spent 3 nights without sleep. Mark's face appeared each time I closed my eyes. He was the guy. He truly was not the man I married. The Charmers guy. The hushed falsehoods, the disingenuous grins. A week later, the pie verified it. Mark was living under a false identity in Denver. He used money and a prepaid phone to rent a tiny flat. The rumors were accurate too. A 3rd lady appeared. Natalie was her name. Her baby girl is 10 months old. Sophie's age, 2 precisely lined up in the math. Natalie was unaware of Tasha, the children, or myself. She believed Mark to be a construction worker on the road who only returned once or twice a week. He informed her about his psychotic ex who hounded him and his custody problems. Does that sound familiar? I felt like screaming. I took a plane to Denver instead. I brought Tasha along. At a coffee, we met Natalie. The infant was brought by her. She seemed anxious, as if she had a feeling things wasn't quite right. We took a seat. I gave the packet to her. The person has all the evidence. Emails, messages, pictures, and bank records. A tree of relatives. Mark, never intended for public view. She turned it over. She reached for her mouth. "Is this authentic?" I gave a nod. "My daughter's father is him," she muttered. I mentioned that he is the father of 3 daughters. She appeared to be having trouble breathing. Across the table, Tasha reached. "You were unaware, neither did we. However, we do now." Natalie had trembling hands. Now what should we do? Then the thought struck. Not only retaliation, fairness. We reported financial fraud, bigamy, abandonment, and child endangerment to Denver PD. Together, we engaged a lawyer. His accounts were frozen by us. His social security number was flagged by us. Everything was turned in to child services. Each of the 3 states was involved. We posted his name and face on all local news tip lines, social media groups, and parent forums. We made a profile. Mark is wanted in 3 states for dumping 3 families. It spread like wildfire. After a barrage of comments, something unexpected happened. A second female reached out. She claimed to have dated Mark for 6 months while he was with all of us, but she is a fourth childless woman. He informed her that he was busy at work and not dating. He pledged to wed her. He received $4,000 from her for a startup. He abandoned her. She was the one who located him this time. Took a photo of him getting into a rental car in Colorado Springs, sent it to us. He had changed his hair and grew a beard wearing sunglasses, but it was him. I called the PI, gave him the tip. He tracked Mark's car to a motel. Cops were waiting. He tried to run, didn't get far. They arrested him for fraud, identity deception, and child support. Evasion. He was handcuffed in front of that dusty old motel in his $12 Walmart jeans, looking like a man who had finally run out of road. And that's when I did the final thing I wrote to every woman he ever dated. Every female he cheated with. Every lie he told. I wrote it all down. Then I sent the tale to a true crime blog. They released it under the banner, "The Man with Three Families." How one mother brought a sociopath to his knees. It reached 1 million views in 3 days. Mark's mugshot was everywhere. His employer dismissed him. His license gone. His reputation shattered. He's in prison now. 7 years, no parole. Tasha's constructing a new life. Natalie won full custody and support. And me, I testified in court. You didn't simply lie, I told him, staring him in the eye. You created a lie-based universe, and suddenly it is collapsing. He remained silent, did not shed a tear. He simply appeared worn out, as if the performance had ended, and without it he had lost his sense of self. Yes, I did make errors. I disregarded the warning signs. I had too much faith, too quickly forgave. I became blinded by appeal. However, I also put an end to it. I revealed him. I kept my children safe. And I'll be honest with Sophie when she grows up and asks where her father is. I'll then show her how I managed to survive him. Story 3. You're not an aunt at all. Loud enough for everyone, my sister remarked. I paid $2,250 for the meals and $730 in presents for the baby shower. My father laughed. You ought to have been aware. You're not welcome. I said nothing at all. I played the video after blocking every dime. Emma's voice was harsh and loud enough to cut through the music playing at the baby shower and stab me in the chest. You're not even a real aunt, she hissed. I blinked once because I knew she expected me to react, not because I was perplexed. Just as the final dish of the cheap stuffed mushrooms I had paid for arrived at the buffet table, she said it. Pastel balloons, leased silver chairs, and a cake that resembled a sculpture rather than a dish filled the space. I paid the full $250 catering cost and an additional $730 for items from her list. She just dreamt of the ridiculously costly crib and the stroller with wheels smoother than my professional path diaper genie. Everything was paid for me only. In exchange, I received that statement as if it were a joke. As if I hadn't been 5 feet away when she shouted it loud enough for the aunts to turn their heads politely and the cousins to snigger. I didn't answer. Not in words. Then no. My dad, who had been largely quiet until then, laughed behind his drink while I was still clutching the present bag. You ought to have been aware. As if it were the weather, he remarked, You're not welcome. I turned to see. He had a glass in his hand. Wearing the new shoes I got him for Christmas, since his previous pair were too tight, I paid to seat in the banquet hall I had reserved in my name. You ought to have known, he said again. I stopped faking at that point. I put the present bag on the closest table, flipped my phone so that the screen was facing me, and pressed the button that I had marked as Black All. It was a bank freeze, not just a block of contacts. 3 planned transfers were stopped by a utility, and 1 specific email with video files and the header, "To whom it may concern," was delivered. I remained silent. I refrained from crying. Once more, I didn't even blink. I simply walked out. The tale doesn't stop there, though. The trigger was just that statement, that moment, and that smug little laugh. They were unaware that I had spent months organizing my departure and that I had done more than simply preserve receipts. I would record them. I wasn't furious when I left the baby shower. I departed in a void, absolute and cold, as if the oxygen in the room had been switched off. And the only person who noticed was me. My mother's text message had already appeared on my phone when I returned to my car. Emma was misinterpreted by you. She has hormones. Don't let a dumb joke spoil your day. After you've cooled down, let's chat. No one understood that I wasn't upset. After spending a lifetime there, I was worn out. Strolling ATM. They are available as needed. Therapist, their backup plan. As this was not the first instance. Not even close. While Emma worked on her blog last year, I paid her rent for 9 months. When Dad claimed that the insurance company had mishandled the paperwork, I settled his medical bill. I even traveled home last Christmas after Mom guilt me with the holidays aren't the same without you. I ended up preparing a complete supper for 12 people while they watched TV, and Emma recorded a TikTok video in which she claimed to have created it alone. No one corrected her. No one ever did. And they turned me into the antagonist when I attempted to back off even a bit. Each and every time. I attempted something easy 3 weeks before to the baby shower. No, I said. Before her baby came, Emma called to ask if I could take care of a few more things. These included maternity clothing, a car seat, a cot, and a cleaning service she discovered on Instagram. I informed her that I felt overburdened. It was 2 days before she responded. She then made a Facebook post. The real family arrives complete with a picture of a gift from someone else that tags all of the family members except for me. Like a Christmas tree, the comment area was illuminated. Emma, that's how you do it. You are deserving of everything. Some people lack the correct understanding of how to love. Everyone understood who she was referring to. The thing they always knew was that. My mom enjoyed acting as the peacekeeper. She never stopped her, though. Never, ever. She simply gave me a call later, in a low voice as if we were involved in some unnamed catastrophe together. She's not sincere. You are aware of her personality. It's simply stress. However, stress is not an excuse for manipulation. Not what I discovered in particular. The shower is 2 nights away. I wasn't spying. In order to keep track of the things I had paid for, I started sorting my digital receipts for tax season. However, I discovered a folder named Baby Shower Stuff when I accessed my shared cloud account, which Emma was still able to access years ago. Screenshots were included. Dozens. Some were PDFs, and some were group conversations. One was a spreadsheet with the name backups on it. In the event that my name flakes, I took it open. Each item on her register was listed with its name next to it. Plan B for me, other visitors. Saying it came from Grandma Clancy stopped by. The cost of Next Tab catering was $2,250. Paid. Indeed. Situation. Let her assume she came up with the concept. In solitude, I sat there. Something inside me changed at that very instant. Since I wasn't just being used by them. They were the ones who planned it. I'm counting on it. I'm placing a wager that I wouldn't decline again. I thus made a backup of the folder, was stored on a flash disk. 3. I was actually prepared. I didn't recoil when she told me that I wasn't even a legitimate aunt because of this. I didn't scream when my dad made fun of me like I was the subject of a family joke because of this, since I was aware of the following step. I needed one more item before, though. Evidence. So I looked further. Emma had lied to me in the past about relationships, money, and employment. However, I never had proof. I did this time. I discovered audio recordings with the labels dated and proof for CPS only if needed in the cloud storage. She was keeping it for later use against another person. I pressed play to hear Emma's voice. If they attempted to force me to work again, I warned them I would make up a tale. Just shed a tear or two. Bring up the topic of postpartum. They will retreat. Background sounds, laughter, the voice of Dad. My daughter is that. That was it. The entire pattern was that. 12 seconds as well. Manipulate, act like the victim, receive a prize. I made a copy of the file. I then delivered the last blow. Do you recall the video? Did she ask me to record? The one where I was expected to take some decent film by strolling around the banquet hall before people arrived? I wanted to assist, so I did it as always. She was unaware that I had neglected to end the recording. When she and her friend passed the desserts, the camera continued to roll and she muttered, "She better cry when she sees all this otherwise." And sharing that voicemail from her friend in Miami. Do you still possess that, Emma? She's obviously unaware of the amount I have on her. Even though I don't cry easily, I knew then that it was never love. Leverage was used. They weren't related. They functioned similarly to a syndicate. The one they used was me. They overpowered me. Silence, they believed, meant surrender. I wasn't silent, though. I was doing some math. I sent out precisely 5 packages on the morning following the baby shower. Each one included a transcript, a print, a USB drive, and a brief note for background information in case you forgot what you were laughing at. Discusses the family group chat. Emma's place of employment, my father's golf club, and my mother's church group, 2 gossip pronouncements. The final one. That was the gasoline match. You see, I taught half the family how to use technology, but they didn't remember that. They gave me administrative rights within the family. Google Drive is the old shared folder that we use to organize contacts, reunions, pictures, and recipes. I showed a few family members who had made fun of me the video in private, not to exact revenge, but to remind them of what they had laughed at. They observed it. Yes, they did watch it. How can I tell? Because at 6:12 a.m., my phone began to buzz. First Linda. Uncle Pete came next. Next Emma. Next Mom. Then Dad. I didn't answer. The video opened with that baby shower clip. Emma's voice crystal clear. "You're not an aunt at all." Then a smash cut to her whispering over the dessert table. "She better cry. Otherwise, I'm posting that voicemail from Miami." Then I added the spreadsheet, the catering plan, the manipulation checklist. Someone in the family chat had reposted an old message thread one many had forgotten, and suddenly everything became clear. Then the audio of Dad. "My daughter is that." It ran 12 minutes, just 12. But it changed everything. The comments in the family group chat turned rapid. My cousin Mandy, who hadn't uttered a word in 2 years, posted, "What is this? This is who we celebrated." And then quiet, until Emma posted one word, "phony." That's when I released a screenshot of the original cloud file timestamps, then a screen recording exposing her name as the original uploader, then a selfie of myself clutching the original backup drive, and eventually a message. If it's fake, Emma, play the video. The first one. We all know you have it. Play it then. She didn't. Not on the internet. Her employment, not in private. They dug for themselves. It seems that her employer began to inquire. I only learned afterward that things became complex. I wasn't involved. Before you even realize you're bleeding, they smell blood. He texted me my dad. "What did you do? Have you done anything?" I answered, "I was reared by you. What were you anticipating?" After that, he remained silent. Mom, however, did. Her voicemail was left. Out of breath. Broken. "You overreached yourselves. It was only a family business. It was not required to be made public. We were embarrassed by you. That was the idea. A house of mirrors was constructed. I just shattered the glass." I wasn't finished, though. I made a minor lawsuit. For ownership of the video material, not for the money. I did all of the filming, editing, and storage myself. They didn't have authorization to utilize it. Censored. Made fun of me. I filed a slander lawsuit under unlawful dissemination. Petty, perhaps. However, it conveyed a message. My story is now mine. As if things couldn't get any worse, I forwarded the last file to my mother's church's pastor. The memo was voice recorded. Emma once more. "What Mom says doesn't matter to me. She won't be named during the baptism. She is a farce. To her, it was only a source of income. Mom, that one broke. She phoned me, crying, lamenting, and pleading with me to keep going, to protect her reputation even though she knew it was too late. Please do not forward it to the women's circle. They will. I will never be forgiven by them. I didn't respond. However, I was never required to send anything. Word got out on its own, and everyone was aware by the time of the subsequent prayer gathering. Retaliation was never the goal. The goal was to put a definitive stop to the performance. It was a week before I spoke again. Did not pick up the phone, did not read the messages. I cleaned the flat, made coffee, and went to work. Turned down the volume while watching old TV series. I knew what was coming, so even though the environment was noisy, I was silent and composed. Using letterhead from a legal firm where my former boss's son currently works, I sent an actual letter in a sealed envelope by certified mail on the 7th day. I once assisted the same individual in revising his resume title statement and personal statement regarding the last name family trust in all related agreements. I sent it to Emma's apartment building's leasing office, the Veterans Club, where my father serves the school, where my mother works finance office, and each mailbox of the family members who silently saw everything for years. But simply the facts without any drama or complaining. Documentation and confirmed accounts are my signatures. I declared that none of my family members could now rely on me for financial support, that I was taking myself off of all family authorizations, joint credit records, and shared accounts, that I had kept documents attesting to manipulation, fraud, and emotional abuse, and that I would no longer pay for any bills as of June 1st in case anybody attempted to take revenge. The final paragraph was the most impactful. This is not a letter of retaliation. It's out. You cannot supply merely leverage and expect devotion. After being publicly humiliated, you cannot demand silence. You can't act like a debt collector and claim family. This isn't a legal action. It's a severance. Internet theatrics was not what it was. It was a record of liberty. And like a falling stone, it struck them. Mom was the first to react. After getting no answer when she contacted my workplace, she called my colleague. No success. 3 hours later, she sent a strange email to the finance department of my firm, asking them to take family background into account before assuming anything about official declarations. The email was provided to me by my manager in a single line. Setting a limit was the correct thing to do. If you would want us to block her, please let me know. Dad arrived next, as predictable as ever. Persuaded that the letter was a forgery, he hurried into the Veterans Club holding a hard folder, that I would never really follow through, that I was only bluffing. I received a picture from a buddy of mine who is an older veteran. Red-faced and agitated, Dad stands in the foyer attempting to explain why none of this is genuine. However, my signature was on the envelope. An affidavit notarized. Legalese? Actual. And he did something worse when he was unable to use words to get out of it. In order to dispel any suspicions, he went to the treasurer's office at my mom's church. I read the letter. She continued, looking him square in the eyes. She was a quiet woman in her 60s. I'm aware of what I've witnessed, and I no longer want to be involved. He didn't answer. Silently, he departed. However, Emma suffered the most when a social services agent called on the same day the letter arrived at her building. Did someone on that email list read the bit about how I was paying for daycare, infant formula, and even health insurance? It's not because I reported anything. Emma's housing application said that she was the only provider. That led to a follow-up. 2 of her coworkers were summoned for a clarifying discussion. I received a snapshot from an old buddy. Did she never have custody? Is that correct? That everything was done by her sister. A certified letter can do that. With tracking, it provides the truth. Like a boiler, the family exploded. More dangers. Fresh, phony accounts. My HR received anonymous emails. Even a printed, guilt-wrapped offer for reconciliation. I didn't go. I accomplished something better instead. For my new apartment, I placed an order for a personalized nameplate. Just inside the entrance is a little plaque. No delivery for the last name was displayed. Family came back to the sender. Someone attempted to rip it off 2 days later. As if nothing had occurred, I saw my father trying to unlock my door while holding keys after I had put a camera. I made a police call. It was the last time, but he ran away before they got there. Emma wrote me one final letter a week later. Real, but with long, crooked lines scribbled by hand. After reading this for the first time, please burn it if you're done with us. She wasn't demanding. She wanted to know. I read it. She didn't get burned. Yes, I did. No manipulation, no justifications. Only one phrase remained. I never deserved the aunt you were, and the sister I ought to have kept safe. I preserved the letter, but I didn't respond. No reconciliation, no promises, because only distances need to be forgiven. It was 6 weeks before I heard from any of them, nor a knock, nor a call, not even a murmur from a cousin who was trying to avoid taking sides. Nothing except a thick, buzzing quiet, the sort that typically precedes a storm. However, I was the storm this time. They were regrouping, and I knew it. Families like mine operate in this manner. They're not sorry. They plan and bide their time till feelings subside sufficiently to reappear, as if nothing had occurred. I therefore kept one step ahead. My phone number has been updated. Fresh SIM, don't forward. After leaving the group chats, I formally reported them to my ISP so they could be flagged as spam. My own family, yes. I even changed my will and made it clear that an audit and rejection clause would be automatically triggered if any of their names were to emerge on any legal request after my death. I then dispatched the last letter. Not to them, not to the individuals who mattered to the financial institution where Dad still feigned relevance in retirement investing circles, not to the leasing office that Emma still owed to the school district HR where my mom worked. Every letter was brief, precise, and neat. This serves as verification that I am not legally, emotionally, or financially connected to full names of addresses. There will be a prompt legal reaction to any attempt to link me to them, raise funding on their behalf, or utilize my name and supporting evidence. Accredited, followed, recorded. My phone began vibrating again, this time from strangers by the time the final envelope touched down. Emma's former employer, a member of her father's golf club, one of Mom's co-workers who prefers to avoid conflict. It was always the same message. I didn't know. I apologize. I would have spoken sooner rather than later if I had known. But one morning, the stillness was broken. I was standing on my balcony. Skyline View has a new stop for play. When a gift came, they were peacefully sipping black coffee. The return label just has a handwritten name and no sender information. Emma in an album of pictures. It was one of those full leather, inexpensive novels you get at the petrol station. There were childhood photos in there. On Halloween, I held her hand. I hoisted her up into a swing. I pushed her bicycle. Me during my college graduation standing by myself. Nobody showed up for that one. She had written on the final page, I was raised by you. Simply put, I never acknowledged you. A sticky note and a key were stuck to the back. The storage unit located at Grant and 9th. You own it all. I no longer wish to hold any of it. I didn't go. This is what she didn't comprehend, so I tossed away the key. I'm no longer her storage unit. My mother discreetly retired early according to an acquaintance who told me about it. Said that stress was the blame. But when the school got my letter, I realized why they had taken her away. Inquire for conflicts of interest and documentation. She wasn't fired, but she left because they made her feel uncomfortable. She works as a volunteer at a charity thrift store as far as I know. I don't hope she finds peace, even if I want I could. Every time Mom remained silent, she tightened the noose around me a bit more. Mom had decades to speak up, as well as my dad. At last, he did something unexpected. I received a postcard from him. Not a letter, not a voicemail, like a tourist postcard. On the front was an image of a mountain. as if he were attempting to convey some kind of knowledge. It simply said, "You win. While it lasts, enjoy it. No acceptance, no apologies, only resentment." Courier typeface was used for printing. I read that and burst out laughing. He still thought this was a game, not because it was humorous. He was still unable to grasp it. Winning wasn't the goal here. It was about completely abandoning the arena. Someone called Madison sent me an email 3 days ago. Emma's former roommate from college. "I discovered a box of items Emma left at my house years ago," she wrote. "There are several journals, notes, and letters regarding you. I simply wanted to let you know. You might be surprised to learn how long she has been bearing the guilt. Doesn't alter anything, however." Yes, that's all. Since it doesn't actually make a difference, I didn't respond. I completed a little last task last night. I made a label. Only one. In my new mailbox, I stuck it. Black lettering on a white backdrop. Not very fancy. "Return to sender" is what it reads. There isn't a family like that locally. I didn't feel washed for the first time in years after I closed the lid. Felt no obligation. I didn't feel the need to identify myself or demonstrate what I've said, because I had finally taken everything back. Furthermore, they cannot undo something they never created. Not this composition, not this quiet, not me like this. No more. Story 4. At my own wedding, I was abandoned. She discovered a better one. As he broke the news, my best man grinned. In my outfit, I stood still. Everyone is observing. Rather than shedding tears, I simply grinned and walked away. When they both realized what I had been intending all along 3 months later, my phone was inundated with texts. 5 years ago, at a mutual friend's birthday celebration, a 32-year-old man met cops. She fulfilled every desire I had, astute and driven. And we clicked right away. I proposed after we had been dating for 3 years. After she answered yes, we planned our wedding for the next year. Since college, my best buddy. The obvious option for best man was Nathan. He had supported me at every phase. My parents' divorce, job losses, and breakups. I had total faith in him. The wedding day finally came. Everything was in place. The visitors are seated at the furnished venue. And when my bride arrived 30 minutes late, I was waiting for her at the altar in my fitted suit. I became concerned. My stomach was in knots at 45 minutes. Nathan entered through the side door after that. He came at me with an expressionless face. He said bluntly, "She's not coming. She discovered a better one." There was silence in the room. I have 180 sets of eyes watching me, waiting for me to react. "What are you saying?" My voice was hardly heard as I asked. "I have her now," Nathan grinned. "It has been months." He shrugged as if it didn't matter that we didn't want to injure you. "You are aware of how these things occur. My fiancé, my best guy. Together." My heart was racing, yet something strange occurred. Instead of crying, I had a strange sense of serenity. I glanced at Nathan first, then at our family and friends, and then back at Nathan. "All right," I nodded and stated in a low voice. "That's good to know." "Thank you for coming," I replied, turning to the visitors and forcing a grin. "However, today is not going to be a wedding. Enjoy the food and beverages, please." After that, I left. My phone exploded right away. My sister is phoning my parents, the parents of Elisa companions. I switched it off. After driving to a motel and checking in, I sat on the bed's edge and gazed at the wall. I didn't yell or weep, only sat there contemplating. For the past 4 years, Nathan has been my business partner in our IT venture. Only 3 months ago, after working 80-hour weeks and using our funds to bootstrap it, we received a sizable purchase offer. Next week, the paperwork was being finished. Elise was fully aware of it. We would both become billionaires as a result of the deal. I became aware that I had been deceived not just emotionally as I sat in that hotel room. This was a premeditated move. I made the decision right then and there to show them how to play games if they wanted to. 2 weeks later, provide an update. Firstly, I want to thank you for all of your support. I had no idea my post would become that popular. You have no idea how much reading your remarks has helped. It's been an eventful 2 weeks. While I work things out, I've been staying with my sister. While I was away, Elise moved the majority of her belongings out of our home. I'm sorry it happened this way, she wrote on the letter she left on the counter with her key. I'm hoping you'll forgive us both one day. Pardon them. Love. Nathan texted me to suggest that we handle the business matter like grown-ups. Although I have read his messages, I have not replied. He has made 17 calls. His final SMS message. Don't mess things up for us both, due to your emotional nature. I'm sensitive. It's really wealthy. Elise's mother arrived at my sister's house yesterday. Elise apparently informed everyone that I was emotionally distant and domineering. For this reason, she had to go for solace elsewhere for her mother. Elise was perplexed, so she really asked if I would think about resolving the issue. I simply gazed at her till she walked away. I have been busy in the interim. During the years we spent creating the business, I had 3 meetings with my lawyer. Our product's technical brain was always me. Nathan was the gregarious front man, the person who made connections, the one who won over customers. Because we played to one another's strengths, we worked well together. Nathan is unaware that for the past 1.5 years, I have been working on our next generation product on my own. While he and Elise were reportedly beginning their romance, I began this side endeavor. This new technology is of special interest to the acquisition business. I have complete documentation proving I am the only creator, and that is the primary cause of the high worth. The transaction is still proceeding, and both founders are anticipated to remain on for 18 months following the sale, despite working on it on the weekends and at night outside of business hours. Nathan is unaware of the discussions I had with the acquisition team about working alone on the next generation product. I've also been looking over our email and text history, and I came across some intriguing conversations in which Nathan expressly talked about revealing their romance just before the purchase payout. He's too kind to fight back, and he'll probably just forgive you, are some of Elise's insightful responses. They don't know what's going on. A month following the wedding, provide an update. The situation is rapidly becoming worse. At 11 p.m. yesterday, Nathan arrived at my condo and rapped on the door. He began shouting at me when I didn't respond, accusing me of being immature and jeopardizing all we had worked so hard to achieve. Security was called by my neighbor. He was let out, and I watched through the peephole. I'm still screaming that I should talk to him. The arrogance was due to him. This morning, in an attempt to bargain without my help, he sent a direct email to the acquisition business. He proposed that they work just with him and informed them that I was having personal problems. Luckily, I had already informed them on the matter with my lawyer. They sent me his email with a brief note. Is this the issue you brought up with your partner Elise is acting like a complete victim? Her social media posts discussed unhealthy relationships and how the heart may decide to choose a different route. Many of the comments were heartfelt and encouraging. Mason's system was the most offensive aspect. Mia phoned to tell me that nobody wanted to injure you and that these things simply happen. She said I ought to be old enough to keep business and personal affairs apart. I hung up after laughing. Nathan still doesn't understand that I've been recording every conversation we had about their plan to surprise me, every email, text, and phone call. Additionally, as of yesterday, I completed all the paperwork demonstrating my exclusive ownership of the next generation product, which accounts for 70% of the value of our business. 2 days from now comes the acquisition meeting. Nathan believes that we are both there to sign the final documents. He doesn't know. I've previously met with them once before. 3 months after the wedding, provide an update. These 3 months have been crazy. However, everything came together today. Everything went according to plan at the meeting with the purchase firm. I was sitting with my lawyer and the rest of the executive team when Nathan arrived, as usual, 15 minutes late. There was a noticeable absence of his chair. What's happening? His expression was bewildered as he asked. A folder was passed across the table by my lawyer. complete records of my sole development of our next generation product, including time logs, development logs, and patent applications submitted under my sole name, were contained within. This is not possible. His face flushed as he sputtered. This is our business. Our product is that. In fact, I corrected him. This particular technology belongs to me, but the company is ours. I worked on it on the weekends and after hours, and I kept thorough records of everything. The CEO of the acquisition leaned forward. Nathan, we've looked over the evidence. Although we appreciate both of your contributions to the original business, about 70% of our interest in the acquisition is in this next generation technology. Nathan appeared shocked. But the arrangement? Both of us were expected to. The CEO stated that the deal can still go forward, but on modified terms. It turns out that the technology we're most interested in was developed by your partner alone. We gave him stands. We are adjusting our offer to you appropriately. Nathan gestured accusingly at me. You did this alone. No, I said evenly. I simply carried out my duties. As you were occupied with organizing your liaison with my fiancé. Nathan remained on the sidelines as the meeting went on. According to the value of the intellectual property, I would get 85% of the proceeds from the acquisition. The remaining 15% would go to Nathan in recognition of his original business contribution. As initially intended, we would both still have to remain with the company for the 18-month transition period. My phone was inundated with notifications that afternoon. You can't harm me like this, Nathan. Nathan, I'll sue you. Nathan, you've ruined everything. Elise, what have you done? Nathan is devastated. Elise, we need to talk right now. Elise, this isn't fair. It was just a relationship issue. Then came the flying monkeys. Nia, how could you be so petty, Nathan's mom? After all he's done for you. Mutual friend, Tyler. Bro, this is taking things too far. None of them got a response from me. Instead, I forwarded them all something else. Screenshots of the texts where they planned the wedding day. Betrayal to happen before the acquisition. Specifically to try to emotionally devastate me to the point I wouldn't fight back. The phone calls stopped abruptly. An hour later, I got an email from the real estate agent. The sale of my condo was complete. By tomorrow, I'll be on a flight to start my new life. Nathan and Elise can have each other. What they won't have is the future they planned at my expense. Update 6 months later. It's been half a year since that day at the auto. And I'm writing this from my new apartment overlooking the ocean. The view helps. The acquisition deal closed successfully. I stayed on as a consultant for the transition, then stepped away completely. Financial freedom at 32 feels surreal. Nathan didn't handle things well. His threats to sue fizzled when his own lawyer reviewed the intellectual property documentation and explained that side projects developed on personal time were legally separate from the company's assets. We both still work at the company, but in different departments. The tension is palpable whenever we're in the same meeting, but the acquisition team keeps us separated most of the time. The required 18-month transition period continues, but I'm counting down the days. Last I heard, his professional reputation took a hit after several key clients learned what happened and chose to follow me to the new company instead. He's still doing okay financially from his 15% of the acquisition, but nowhere near what he expected. Elise reached out last month with a novel-length email about how she made a terrible mistake and never stopped loving me. Apparently, Nathan dumped her 3 months after the wedding fiasco, when the reality of the new financial arrangement sank in. She's moved back in with her parents. Their relationship imploded spectacularly once the money factor was removed. Karma works in mysterious ways. The strangest part, I feel nothing for either of them now. No anger, no resentment, just nothing. Some unexpected developments. Nathan's younger brother reached out to apologize. Unlike the rest of Nathan's family, he recognized how messed up the situation was and wanted no part in defending it. We've actually become friends. Several investors who heard about how I handled the situation have approached me about my next venture. Turns out integrity matters in business after all. I've started dating again, casually. Nothing serious yet, but it's nice to know that one betrayal doesn't define your whole life. To everyone who supported me through this, thank you. Advice to stay calm. Document everything and let the repercussions come naturally was dead on. For anyone going through something similar. Sometimes the best retribution isn't a spectacular confrontation, but simply letting others suffer the natural consequences of their acts as you go on to greater things. I won't be updated again. This chapter of my life is closed. Unexpected update. 1 year later, I wasn't going to publish again, but something happened yesterday that I felt would bring closure for those who followed my journey. I was back in my hometown for a friend's wedding. Yes, ironic. When I bumped across Nathan's parents at the hotel bar, I attempted to leave without engaging, but she approached me. "You wrecked my son's life," she shouted loud enough for neighboring people to hear. I took a big breath. "Your son made his choices. So did I. You washed everything because of you." Her voice rose as she went on. His relationship, his business, and his reputation. Now a number of individuals were looking. I spoke in a calm tone. "My fiancé had an affair with your son, attempted to exclude me from my own company, and planned to embarrass me at my own wedding. What specifically did you anticipate happening?" She flushed. "That wasn't the case." Elise approached him. "He was attempting to gently disappoint you." I couldn't contain my laughter. In front of our whole family and circle of friends, she told me she had met someone better. It was kind. Well, she said you didn't have to destroy his finances. It was retaliatory. No, I stated that being vengeful would have meant texting everyone with their precise plans for when and how to betray me. Taking the entire transaction for myself and leaving him with nothing would have been vindictive, which is what I could have done legally with the intellectual property I produced. I managed to save my efforts while yet letting him take something. To that, she had no answer. She yelled after me as I was leaving. "He's still having trouble getting back up. You are aware. Are you content now I came to a halt and turned around? I'm not pleased or depressed about Nathan's circumstances. I simply don't give a damn anymore. That is the distinction between retaliation, fairness. You are consumed with vengeance. Justice sets you free." I left and spent the remainder of the weekend having fun. Actually, this is my last update. I've totally moved on, starting a new company, dating a fantastic person, and focusing on the future rather than the past. The goal of life after betrayal is not to exact revenge. The goal is freedom. That independence is well worth the cost. Story 5 at the family's gift-giving ceremony. I gave a note to my sister. To ensure she graduated on time, I covered the cost of her last semester. "He believes that money can compensate for the fact that we don't need him," she replied after reading it and taking a look around. Everyone in the room chuckled. I responded, "I suppose you'll have time off next spring," and retracted the letter. She started weeping in the hallway 15 minutes later. My parents' faces became white. We are family, though. I'm constantly expected to do something pricey by my sister. Jewelry designer nonsense. Money, if she is truly lazy at acting. I got her something better this year. At least I believed I did. When it was my turn to distribute presents, I approached Megan and gave her a simple white envelope. No ribbon, no packaging. It only had her name written in black ink. As I sat back down, she appeared perplexed, then suspicious. She opened it, took out the letter, and read it slowly once more. It contained a one-paragraph message I had written outlining how I had discovered she was $8 or $300 short on tuition, how she had already missed her first spring semester payment, and how I had settled the whole debt, in order for her to graduate on schedule. I even attached a copy of the transaction and her university's confirmation. After finishing her book, she looked up to find the room completely silent. Then she chuckled. Not a shaky chuckle. No appreciative chuckle. A sarcastic, unpleasant chuckle. He believes that money can compensate for his lack of need for us. She continued, holding out the letter as if it were a joke. Everyone joined in her laughter. In fact, my dad gave a clap. Mom put her hand over her lips, laughing so hard that my eyes wet. As though Megan had just won the round, even Grandma Susan gave a tiny snort. I said nothing at all. I simply gazed at them all. Then, with composure, I stretched out, bent forward, and retrieved the letter. "I suppose you'll have some free time next spring?" I remarked. The room flipped at that very instant. The giggling ceased. My sister's grin became cold. As if someone had pulled a rug out from under him, my dad's expression changed. I didn't hear my mother whispering something. Megan merely looked at me as if she was unable to comprehend what had just transpired. I went along the hallway on my way to the front entrance 15 minutes later. Megan was sobbing as she sat on the floor. In an attempt to console her, my mother was kneeling by her. My father was pacing. The two grandparents were observing from the steps, as if they were unable to distinguish between tragedy and theater. I opened the front door. My father moved ahead of it. "What are you doing, in your opinion?" "Oh," he said. I informed him that I was going. "Not after that little performance," he remarked. "Christmas was spoiled by you." Behind him, my mother gave a nod. Megan yelled, "Are you really simply heading out?" I examined each one. The stairway, the hallway, and the false garland that was still covered in dust from the previous year. After shutting the door and removing my coat, I returned to the table and sat down. Everyone went along with it. "Here's how it's going to be, now," I said. No one shifted. My sister was still sniffling and red-faced, attempting to preserve what little pride she still had. My mother seemed to be torn between slapping me and crying. I wasn't giving my dad the opportunity to wind up for one of his phony moral lectures, even if he appeared to be doing so. I remained, sat composed, as if I hadn't just turned the place on its head. I began with the fundamentals. "I've been this family's emergency fund for the past few years," I remarked. "You've all become accustomed to the notion that Kevin will fix any issues that arise whether you like to acknowledge it or not. It was corrected by Megan's tuition. Groceries after Dad's job loss. Repaired. A bundle of airline tickets, a new refrigerator, and a new washer. You couldn't afford to fix 2 automobiles. Repaired, repaired, repaired." I examined each one individually. Nobody argued, just blank looks. I reclined in my seat. Tonight is the last day of it. I paused for a moment. Megan's gaze lowered to her lap. Slowly, my mother shook her head. Although he knew he couldn't afford to smash another wall, my dad's jaw tensed as if he wanted to strike something. "I then add everything up. And you two only have $3,000 now that we're all being honest. When you indicated you were having a difficult time last spring, I lent it to you. You said you will reimburse them within a few months." My father interrupted right away. "We promised to, and we will." I gave a nod. "Excellent. I hope that comes to pass. But let me tell you the truth. I've already written it off in my mind. I wasn't prepared for how hard that hit." My mother winced slightly, as if the idea of my not entrusting them with my money was more offensive than everything that had transpired throughout the evening. "So you think we're thieves now?" my father said. "No," I said. "I believe you're at ease. Feeling at ease with me. Are things cozy, assuming I'll be here to keep the lights on all the time?" I then glanced at you and Megan. "You will get employment if you choose to complete your education. Or perhaps this time Mom and Dad will assist, like parents often do, you know." She glanced at my father, then at my mother. Nobody offered to help. I only sat and observed. At last, my mother responded, "Kevin, this isn't how families operate. We don't put one another in danger." I gave a little smile. "That's funny, since 5 minutes earlier you branded me selfish and laughed at me in front of both of your mothers when I retreated. Back then, I didn't witness a lot of familial loyalty." Grandma Joyce, who had remained silent the entire time, finally spoke out. "He's right, you know," she remarked, glancing directly at my mother. "I observed your collective laughter. I witnessed your actions. Additionally, you never paid back the money you borrowed from me, so don't think I forgot." Everybody's heads turned. My mother's face became pale. Grandma Susan then added her voice. I've always felt that you overindulged, Megan. And now look, she sobbed and bit the hand that fed her. You could feel the ground shaking as it stopped. The two matriarchs had stopped playing. With greater caution, my father got back up. So what he said this time, "You're done with us already, no. I've had enough of being exploited." He referred to me as self-centered. I shrugged. If advocating for myself is selfish, then I suppose I am. However, you are free to use your own judgment if you are uncomfortable with these new terms. And don't contact me the next time you need assistance. At long last, Megan spoke out. She promised to get employment. She sounded quite unhappy about it, as if working in retail were beneath her. My mother muttered that she was attempting to assist. My father remained silent. I got up, made my way to the kitchen, and poured a drink. Nobody trailed behind. Nobody spoke. However, I knew this was not the end. By no means. Days passed before I heard from them. Don't apologize. No justification. Nothing but quiet. As if they were hoping. I would crawl back and act as though it never occurred if they ignored the aftermath long enough. My mother sent the first message. 5 words. I hope you feel proud of who you are. That was it. Not a query. Not even an essay that was passive-aggressive as she generally imagines. I didn't respond. I didn't have to. She had no intention of making amends. She wasn't looking me in the eye when she took a swing. After then, my phone remained silent. Megan went dark. My father, the master of acting as though nothing is amiss, didn't recognize me at all and stayed true to the brand. They must have believed that this might yet be saved, that I'd cooled off, realized how cruel I was, and, as always, be there with my money at the next Sunday dinner or birthday. They weren't prepared for me to become someone who didn't want to or need them. Grandma Joyce called a week later. She didn't dance around it or inquire how I was. "We're eating lunch," she said. "I'll come get you." She appeared as though she had been anticipating this day since Thanksgiving, and she arrived on schedule. She stated, "Your parents are in a mess, and they don't want you to know," as soon as we sat down at a cafe close to my apartment. It seemed like things had been falling apart quickly. My mother had 2 credit card debts. My dad was no longer doing freelance work. Since her transcripts still indicated a financial hold, Megan had been turned down for every internship she applied for and had kept the fact that she was about to be fired a secret. The finest aspect. As though they had a strategy, they attempted to hide it all with the typical phony assurance. "They want you to return and act as though nothing occurred," Joyce added. "Eat supper, smile, and perhaps bring a present. However, their only contribution is guilt." I gave a nod. Said very little. What they would do next piqued my curiosity more. "The cash machine has been disconnected now." After pausing, she continued, "Oh, and your mother has been telling folks that you're not feeling well, that you lost your temper, and that you would benefit from vacation treatment. She is portraying you as the one who is broken." I burst out laughing. She would rather tell people that I'm unstable than acknowledge that she relied on me to raise her second child, I remarked. Joyce didn't chuckle. She seemed worn out. "They won't apologize," she claimed. "They don't want to owe you that as well, not because they don't feel bad." Then she made a statement that I still remember. "They despise the fact that you are the sole adult in that household." 3 of Megan's texts were still unopened when I arrived home that evening. "Hey," said the first. "Can we talk?" said the second. According to the third, I was hired at Lark. It's something, but it's retail. The strange off-brand clothing boutique near the mall's edge was called Lark. No one wanted to pay full price for a rhinestone hoodie, thus everything was on sale because of this. I didn't answer, even though I knew she was unhappy. My mother's message came next. "We are pleased of your responsibility 3 days later. I hope you will quickly pardon us." I also didn't respond to that. They already owed too much, and forgiveness is a deal. Then my dad emailed a strange picture. We had 5 people seated at our supper table. Just 1 chair. Empty mine. "You belong here," the caption simply stated. They wanted to play the emotional card all of a sudden. The same folks who scoffed at my attempts to assist were now behaving as though I had deserted a sinking ship, as if we had the same last name and I owed them my allegiance. The voicemail followed, with Megan's voice sobbing once more. This time, however, it's different. More desperate, less theatrical. She said she was unable to pay her rent, that she hardly had enough money for petrol from her work, said she was unsure about how to balance everything and concentrate on her studies. Then she said something that caught me off guard. I long for the good old days. I listened to it repeatedly while I stood there. Yes, I also miss the way things used to be, back when she expressed gratitude. My parents used to remember who was responsible for paying for their roof. However, those times were over, and they were all unaware of how deeply this would pierce. For 3 days, the voicemails remained in my mailbox. I didn't remove it, didn't reply, simply left it hanging there like a picture from a bygone era that I no longer really believed to exist. In reality, there was never a normal, but Megan wanted everything to return to normal. I was the only one paying for the quiet. Then my mother appeared at my door without warning. She didn't make a phone call. Like a delivery woman, she buzzed the building. I was interested, but I nearly didn't open it. In person, she appeared smaller, as if the circumstances had worn her down. That look was still there, as if she were going to offer something insightful. Additionally, if she entered without asking, she may say, "We need to talk." "Talk," I said. Megan was drowning, she told me. That the work was insufficient. That her academic performance was lacking. Now she couldn't register for finals without paying the financial office. She persisted in attempting to bring it back to her family, highlighting their love and pride for me. I gave her space to speak. I then informed her of the cost. "Do you need assistance?" "All right. However, I'm no longer responsible for the errors of others. I'm not her parent. You two are." When she didn't answer, I continued. "Do you want Megan to get her degree? Then you and your father work things out. Make a sale. Postpone your weekend vacations. Don't go to your anniversary meal. Use your imagination." She began to speak most likely about how difficult their lives were. "I also deducted the $3,000 you owe me. By the end of the year, I will require that." She looked as if I had smacked her. I continued, "I'm not pretending anymore, but I know you won't have it. I'll remember just how much this family values me each time you avoid it." She broke down in tears and stated that I was punishing them all for a single moment of amusement, which wasn't fair. "No," I said, "I'm punishing you for 10 years of acting as though I was to blame for your financial difficulties." She didn't say anything more before leaving. Megan phoned a week later. Nor voicemail nor text. She did make a call. She acknowledged that she didn't anticipate assistance and that she only wanted me to know that she had secured a second job after school instructing children and was in contact with financial aid. Said that all she was requesting was another opportunity to be a better sister, not money. No, I didn't say. I also didn't say no. "We'll see," I told her. Then an odd thing occurred. I was invited over by Grandma Joyce. She was seated in her living room with an overly contented smile when I arrived. I was given a folder by her. Printouts, screenshots of previous emails, receipts, and text messages from the previous 5 years were all contained there. Everything was evidence of the money I had spent on my family. The presents, the loans, the fixes, a whole dossier. "What is this?" I asked. "Proof in the event that they attempt to alter history," she added. She then informed me that Grandma Suzanne had chosen to cut the cord in her own way. She was secretly amending her will to increase the amount going to me and decrease the amount going to my parents. I never requested it. It wasn't what I wanted. However, it was taking place. "We're sick of seeing you used," Joyce murmured, leaning back. "We will change if they don't want to." It wasn't retaliation. It wasn't a win. It was justice, and it had only just begun. I had adjusted to the silence by the middle of February. I won't be getting sporadic calls from my mother asking me to perform this one thing. There were no texts from my dad asking how I was doing while he was actually about to give me another favor. Don't make up crises. Don't feel guilty. I've never had a more tranquil start to a year. Since the voicemail, Megan hadn't sent a message. She was wearing the black business t-shirt and folding sweatshirts that no one ever buys, and I once caught a glimpse of her by chance when she was working behind the counter. She failed to notice me. Or perhaps she did. I simply didn't want to handle it. The second time I saw her, she was carrying a plastic container filled with what appeared to be art supplies across the parking lot of a tutoring center. She appeared worn out, but not in a theatrical sense. Extremely exhausted. It was as though life had finally caught up with her. She was at work. She was coping with it. That section, I appreciated at least. Then one evening, at approximately 9 o'clock, my dad texted me. "You don't really need us, do you?" No context, no punctuation. For several minutes, I gazed at it. Since that wasn't a question, I didn't respond. He eventually realized that I had outgrown that family and that their control was no longer effective, that they claimed to adore me once I left the system they had created and discovered anarchy. Meanwhile, in the background, things were changing. Grandma Susan called to confirm that my address had been updated while she completed some papers. That meant something to me. She meant what she had stated the last time. Grandma Joyce had also gone to Calder with my mom, so I didn't press her. She apparently confronted her about the entire tale of Kevin's instability. The family was being pushed about by her. I warned her that she would begin revising the story at every family get-together going forward if she didn't stop. I nearly wished I could have attended that event. Then Joyce called again. "Grandma Susan was having supper," she said. "Just a little family. You ought to attend." "I said," she said. "The time has come." "Who would be there?" I asked. She made no hesitation. "Everyone." I almost refused. My entire being was prepared to burn that final bridge and leave them in the ashes. However, the way she phrased it gave me the impression that this had nothing to do with peace. Power was at issue here, about showing them that I was no longer in need of shouting to be heard. So I went. Susan's home had the similar appearance. 5 Christmases ago, the same wreath. Candles with the same aroma. The door was opened by my mother. She took a while to say hello. She simply gave me a look that said she wasn't sure how things would turn out. Then she moved out of the way so I could enter. As if he had forgotten all that had transpired, my dad was already seated at the table. Megan was also present with her hair pulled back and her eyes hardly lifted from her glass of water. One of them initiated contact. It was weird at dinner. Joyce used casual conversation about some cousins to try to diffuse the situation. Sweetheart, no one gave a damn. Everybody was waiting. The head of the table. Grandma Susan then turned to Megan and said, "How is work going?" Megan said, exhausted, looking up. Then it became quieter. "However, I'm doing it. I'm making the payment. Gradually." She gave me a single look, not requesting anything. A few minutes later, my mother said, simply acknowledging. They'd been thinking about what occurred a lot, she added. And perhaps they'd chuckle because they didn't know how to respond to such a cry-out. She used phrases like moving forward, appreciating, and reflecting. She didn't apologize. "We know we owe you," my dad added. "We're working on it." Although he didn't say the $3,000 by name, we both understood what he meant. I remained silent. Nothing else could be said. "This is your chance to start anew," Susan remarked, leaning forward and resting her elbows on the table. "And don't expect either of us if you make a mistake." She gave Joyce a glance. To shield you from it. Like children being reprimanded after supper, they nodded. Megan gave me an envelope while I was putting on my coat. I arched an eyebrow. It wasn't money she claimed. There was a card with handwriting on plain cardboard that had not been purchased from a store. It said, "I realize I made a mistake. I can't take back the words I uttered. I hurled it in your face because you gave me more than I deserved. I'm not requesting assistance. All I want is to be redeemed as your sister. I apologize." No signature was present, only her. I remained silent. I simply left. I have the envelope. We didn't get better. Not even close. The hierarchy, however, was different. I was no longer their safety net. Now I was something different. As if weary of winter-spring also arrived early to remind them. The temperature rose. It all smelled of thawing dirt and damp pavement. And people began acting as though my family hadn't completely collapsed at the beginning of the year. However, I did recall. I recalled everything. More significantly, when I eventually quit bearing their burden, I was able to recall who they were. Megan managed to get by this semester. Grandma Joyce didn't message me about it, but she kept me updated after all of her classes started a part-time job that paid well and required a 90-minute travel each way. I kept quiet around her. I saw her once outside the bus stop close to my house, but not at that time. Half drowsy, she stood among shabby apartments clutching a Tupperware container as if it were her last item. She seems to have finally realized what it means to stand up for what you believe in. I failed to wave. I simply watched her leave in silence. The problem with folks who have coasted their entire lives is that they either change or break down when things get difficult. Megan remained composed. She endured pain, yet she remained strong. To me, that was more important than ever receiving an apology. But nothing changed with my folks. The $3,000 they owed me turned into this unacknowledged ghost. They avoided discussing it as if it were a taboo subject. We're working on it, though. No, we still remember. Not even a hollow pledge to deter me. It seemed as though they thought it would vanish if they never spoke it again. I could have mentioned it, but I chose not to. How long they pretended to be playing the long game was what I wanted to witness. But I was too. Rather, my father continued to email me links to items he believed I would find interesting. My mother experimented with recipes, old family pictures, and nostalgia. Comments about it used to appeal to me. It was a terrific time. On the surface, everything seemed innocuous, but I understood what it was. It was money. Attempting to repair anything without covering the costs of the harm. Megan handed me that card, the one when she apologized. It's still with me. It's in the drawer with my auto title and passport. It wasn't about making things even so, even though I don't read it very frequently, I haven't thrown it out either. It was her way of expressing that she had finally seen the destruction she had contributed to. Susan, meantime, carried out her resolve to reform. Joyce subsequently informed me that my mother was upset when she learned. During the family meal, she reportedly confronted Susan and attempted to shame her by asking why she was excluding her own kid. Susan just informed her that my mother had contacted me that evening since Kevin was present while you weren't. She made no explicit reference to the world, simply danced around it. I hope you don't think we've been ungrateful, they said. You still haven't reimbursed me, I said. I believed the line had dropped because she was silent for so long. We will soon, she added. She spoke too cautiously, though, as if it had been practiced. 3 months have passed since then. Not a dime has been seen by me. The money is no longer the main concern. I remember that it's about the principle. I will never forget. We now speak once in a while. Birthdays, holidays, and trivial matters. I'm kind and courteous. However, they are no longer able to close that distance, that faith. I used to gladly provide such unsaid allegiance. It's gone. Exhausted. Furthermore, I won't recreate it for them. Megan is still employed. I'm still exhausted. However, she has never requested money. She no longer regards me as the answer. I've resumed responding to her texts as a result. Although we are not near, we are gradually and really rebuilding. My parents continue to act as though nothing has changed. However, it isn't. This version of myself, the one they created when they laughed that night, is not the one who picks up the pieces for everyone else. Thus, it never will.